All right. Here. Hello, hello. 65%, very nice. Okay, cool. All right. Why can you tilt that camera? Just move that camera this way a little. Yeah. There we go.
I love how you say wife. Right? I love how you say wife. Can you do this? I said, oh my God, that's so cute.
That is her name now. It's only awkward in public. Like when we get separated, and I'm like, wife. Okay, so our YouTube people are on. Okay, hey guys, welcome to day 3 of the 5-day content challenge. Day 1, we went over the concepts. Day 2, we went over how to prep for the shoot, and day 3 today is how do we actually shoot. And so I've got a DSLR here, the Sony FX3, and I've also got my iPhone set up here. And we're going to be showing you all the basic principles, how to shoot on an iPhone or a DSLR. All right. So I kind of went over my VIP folks already. They're going to be shooting primarily on their phones. They both have iPhones. And if you have an Android, I apologize. I don't have an Android with me. But the principles are kind of the same. All right. So I'm gonna give you guys some general concepts of how to shoot and what makes a quality shoot or quality video. And then we're going to go into the difference between the two. You guys get ready to take a lot of notes. It's going to get pretty technical. I'm going to try to keep it as high level as possible, but I enjoy the technical stuff. I have a degree in IT, so that's what made it so fun. Yeah, so I'm going to try to keep it as high level as possible, but if I get too much, just raise your hand, let me know. All right, so first thing, let's show the iPhone. This is going to be a live demonstration. So I would hope that you all won't judge me if something comes up on my phone. Okay, because I don't know. It's live. All right. There we go. Very nice. Okay, so I got my camera up. All right. You see my wife over there? Hi, wife. Okay, cool. All right. First thing you always got to do is clean your lens. I don't know why they always get dirty, whether it's oil, smudge, whatever, but there's a big difference between, hold on. Because usually this is what happens. You're talking on your phone, right? And people try to shoot like this, right? Big difference between that image and this image. All right, you guys see that difference? Okay. Yes, so first thing I'm talking about is the frame. The frame is what is the size of your image, okay? Now, you guys will see in most iPhones, you'll see that 4K up there, right? Most people start with the HD. So there's HD and then there's 4K. This is the size of the square of the picture that you're taking. HD is 1080. It's really 1920 by 1080. Well, 1920 this way by 1080. But it's 1,920 pixels by 1,080 pixels, right? That's the size of the rectangle that you're recording, or in this case, the vertical rectangle, okay? It's 1080 pixels in there. Now, you have the option of going 4K. 4K is 4,000 pixels. It's 4 times the number of pixels in HD. So if you're recording just a regular everyday skit, 4K is usually overkill. It's too many pixels. The challenge with something being too big is that the file size is huge. You use up all the data on your, or the space on your phone. And if you're transferring it, it takes a whole lot of hard drive space. So I only shoot in 4K when I know I need to do something, like I need to punch in, right? By punching in, meaning I want to record this image here, but in post, I may want to blow up Maggie back there or blow up the gold camera. I want to, zoom into it. Well, I can zoom in. If I shoot 4K, I can zoom in up to 4 times and still receive a 1080 image. So I don't compromise the quality of my image by zooming in when I shoot in 4K. But if I shoot in 1080 and I zoom in 4 times, well, that final image will be almost 240. It'll be, a quarter of the 1080, right? And if it's a quarter of that, like it's 280 pixels, well, now it's going to look pixelated. It's going to look like Roblox, right? It's going to look really trashy. Okay. So 4K gives you more pixels, right? 1080 is usually your final product. Let's establish this. When most people are looking at YouTubes and on their phone, usually a 1080 HD image is quality enough. Most people can't tell the difference between 4K, especially on the phone. You can tell the difference when you look on it on a laptop, so a screen large enough on a laptop, a TV. People have 60-inch TVs, right? Or in the movie theater. You can absolutely see the difference in a theater, right? On a 60-inch display TV, you will see the difference. Very minimal on a laptop, right? And it's almost unnoticeable on a cell phone. Again, the difference between 1080 and 4K. So just know what your end result's going to be. The other part of that, so that's the frame, that's the size. So we're recording everything in HD on our cell phone, because most times if I'm recording on a cell phone, I want it to be for cell phone distribution. Okay. The next thing is you stay at 60. That 60 is how many pictures. So when you record video, a camera takes video different than how our eyes take video. Our eyes look at video as real life. The camera is actually still taking pictures. It's just how many pictures am I taking? So if you guys have ever seen those flip books where people have the book and they just flip it like, right? And then they'll draw in it and it looks like then the characters start moving, right? As they draw. That's what a camera is doing, a video camera, a modern camera. That's all it's doing. It's taking so many pictures really fast, strings them together and plays them, and it looks like motion. It looks like a movie, right? And so when you do that, what I like to say is that's why some of the best videographers are great photographers. Because if you can take an amazing photo, you can take a great video. You just got to keep it going, right? And I'll show you some of the rules of photography, and they still apply, okay? So the frame rate is how many pictures a second am I taking? Here are the rules. If you have taken notes, this is where you want to take notes. Film, most movies are 24 frames a second. 24, 23, 976. Somebody's going to try to get all technical. Again, I'm giving just overview, right? For those people who are really spot on, okay? But it's about 24 frames per second. 24 pictures in a second is when you go to the theaters and you're typically watching your typical movie, right? It's 24 frames. A cell phone video, so a reel, a TikTok, or a soap opera are usually shot in 30 frames a second. They get a little more data. They look a little different. They look a little more real, right? They don't give that fantastic look, right? As cinema, but they're shot in 30 frames. Many game shows, TV shows, right? They're usually shot in 30 frames. Then you have 60 frames. 60 frames are usually, again, cell phone, the old home video cameras, right? Some TVs, they have this, I forgot what they call it, like an HD translator or something, and they make your movies look more real. It's almost like you can touch the people. All they're doing is they're taking from 24 and they're translating that to 60. They're adding more cameras. They're interpolating more frames, not more cameras. They're interpolating more frames into that camera to make it more real. All right, so we'll see if we can tell the difference. This is my fingers wiggling at 60 frames. It should look pretty real. Let me see if I can switch it while they're wiggling. And that's 30 frames. You see, it's a little more delay, right? So this is 60 frames. It looks a little more real. And then there's 30 frames. There's a little more delay, right? Now, if this camera could get down to 24, you would see even more of a delay. That delay feels like fantasy, right? That's why movies opt to use that 24 frames. Okay, and now how that plays when you're shooting is when I film trying to think of what is the end result. Again, if I know it's for cell phones, I know I'm going to be just doing 1080 HD. But if I also know I may want to slow something down, I want to do something in slow motion, or let's say I'm shooting a basketball game, right? And there's, they're going crazy. And I may want, I don't want the super slow-mo. I'll show you how to get super slow-mo on the phone. I don't want the super slow-mo, but I may want just a little, effect of slow-mo in it. Then I'll shoot in HD 60. And now here's where it gets a little technical. Excuse me. At 60 frames, I know I'm exporting in 24. So at 60 frames, I know I can slow it down by half and still achieve 30 frames in a second. Okay, so if I can slow it down by half and still get 30 frames, that means my slow-mo is still going to look buttery. It's going to look amazing versus the slow-mo that if I shot it in 24 and I tried to slow that 24 image down by half, or even if I shot it at 30 and tried to slow it by half, well, now I'm at 15 frames per second. And at that point, at 15 frames, it's going to look jittery. It looks jumpy. It's not going to look like a very smooth slow motion. All right. So if I know I want to slow something down a little more, I will shoot in 60 frames. But other than that, I'm shooting HD 30 for most of my reels, TikToks, and that kind of deal. All right. Let's make sure everyone's still comprehending. Okay, cool. All right. Because I'm gonna muscle through this and y'all gonna be taking notes and you're gonna learn a whole lot, all right, on this 5-day challenge. All right, the other piece, cinematic. Many phones have cinematic mode. What cinematic mode now does, it allows me to change the focus of my camera real time, right? So that looks super dope when you're shooting a project. This one actually will do it automatically. It'll recognize faces. And if I had two people in front, if I had the wife in one area and then, somebody else behind her, when they turned around, the camera would recognize that they turned around and it would rack to them. It's like you see it racking to my fingers. Racking means rack focus, okay? And we take it off, it'll go back to the other person, right? So super cool cinematic effect that you could do in cinematic mode on the cell phone. So if I'm doing something that I know I want that cinematic effect, which really is I try to achieve movie style recording no matter what I do, right? The closer I can get to a movie, the closer people are going to be like, yo, that's a good video. That looks amazing. It's just, it looks closer to a movie. So the focus allows you to do that as well. So that's the cinematic mode. The last thing is when you talk about, we can't talk about focus without talking about bokeh, right? When somebody feels like something is a super quality image, right? Typically what they're saying is, so this is a photo in regular photo mode, okay? And I'm gonna take a photo in portrait mode. All right, so you guys see the difference? This is the portrait mode photo. That's the regular mode photo. Portrait, regular, right? What portrait does is it digitally finds a way to blur out the background, to make it really blurry. So you see how that image is coming up nice and bokeh'd, nice and blur in that background, right? Now in regular mode, it still does it. It's just not as pronounced, right? So you see she's bokeh, but the gold one isn't quite there yet, right? That's the difference between photo and portrait. Portrait tries to fabricate more of a bokeh, more of a blurry image in the background. That's the sign of quality video, right? Just overall. Now there are different, talk to your peers, right? Your DP peers, right? Your DP will be like, bokeh is the type of blur. Different lenses can make something, this kind of blur where you can kind of see, right? It just looks like a kind of a Gaussian blur, just, like a fuzzy blur. And there are other lenses that will be more of a circular blur, or they handle lights different, right? So you can get very technical in that regard, but just know overall, the sign of a professional photo and video is the amount of blur in the background, right? So if you can achieve that blurry background look, that very tight focus, right? That's the sign of a quality video. And so when we get to DSLRs, I'll show you how to achieve that with the DSLR. all right? Because the iPhone is just doing it digitally. It's using software to figure it out, all right? So that's that. And then you have slow-mo. So when we're shooting on slow-mo, right, there's HD 240 and then HD 120. So that, again, that 120 is how many frames per second, right? So you saw when we were in video mode, we could get up to 60. In slow-mo mode, now we can get up to 120. We can get even more frames. So now I can go 4 times, like I can reduce my speed. If I reduce it by half, I'm still at 60. If I reduce it by half of that, I'm at 30. So I can go a quarter of the speed of that's naturally happening and still get that beautiful slow-mo effect, right? And then you could even double that and go 240, right? So at 240, just imagine this water naturally moving, right? Actually, I can just record this. Let's see. All right, so this is the water at 240. I don't have to record that much, okay? And then here's the water at 120. I don't have to record that much, okay? So this is the 120. See how smooth and beautiful that slow-mo is? Okay, we're gonna play that again. That's at 120 frames, right? So it's the iPhone, it's taking the pixels, and they're interpolating that. So they're displaying it at 30, because it's playing it back at 30, but it's slowing it down to match that. And here's the 240. Even more beautiful, okay? 120. Still see it's like, okay, I'm capturing it, but that 240, it's really showing the water slush around, right? Because again, it's more frames that are happening in each second, right? So when I'm doing, this is like my hack, which I love to do, when I'm doing social media videos, right? I almost all the time record in HD 120 and just record somebody walking, somebody flipping their hair, somebody, you know what I mean, somebody dancing, right? Doing anything. You recorded at HD 120 and just slow it down and put some music on that, you're killing the game. That is the social media hack right there. All right. VIP, any questions so far? You guys comprehending? Everything smooth?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, cool. All right. So now let's 750. Cool. We talked about, and time lapse is the opposite of slow-mo. Slow-mo takes more frames in a second. Time lapse takes less frames. So time lapse will actually take maybe 2 or 3 images a second, right? Because it's thinking that it's going to be, you're supposed to be recording over a long period of time. So you don't want a lot of pictures taken, because you're going to be stringing this together to show a lot of stuff happening. Okay, that's your time lapse. All right, so those are your typical shooting modes on a cell phone. All right, so now let's move into the DSLR. You said you have a question? What's your question?
So in regards,
So in regards to shooting, that's filming, but what about the sound when it comes to them using sound? Or are you gonna get into that at all?
So yes, so the cell phone will take good sound by itself if you're in a quiet setting, right? And so the wife just asked about sound. What do you do about sound? The cell phone will take good sound by itself. But we have other options. Can you give me that in my book bag? There's that, just open the book bag and you see a little circular thing. Yep, open that. On the right side. Yep, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so there are other hacks. So we talked about, I think I may have mentioned it before, but the sign of professional video is really professional audio. The sign of a good video is really good audio. You can have a HD or even less, a 360 right? 360 pixel video. But if your sound is really good, people will pay attention. But if you do the opposite, if you have a 4K image, but the sound is trashy, people are tuning away, right? So you got to pay attention to sound when you're doing professional video. Again, the cell phone, as long as you're in a quiet space, will take good sound. But if you wanted to invest a little more, they have microphones for the iPhone. So this is a MV88. Guys see that? MV88, right? So it's a little microphone that I can put on the bottom of the phone. Well, I can't do it now because it's connected to my computer. But you connect this to the bottom of your cell phone and direct the audio, right? So this sits at the bottom of the phone and the mic is here. It's under this cushion. See if the cushion comes off. The cushion probably does come off. I don't want to break it though. Okay, but there's a mic under here and this records amazing audio. It's Shure, S-H-U-R-E, MV, like Mary Valley 88. Now it's an expensive little thing. I think it was over $100 for this little thing, but the sound quality on here is amazing. They actually also sell lapel mics where you can do the same thing. You connect the bottom piece to the phone and the other piece connects to a lapel, right? They've got those as well. So there are different mic options you can get for the iPhone. And that just depends on what level, again, how much you really want to invest in getting that. But if you can, I would highly suggest it.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Would you recommend, because I know when I saw it on Shein and I see it on like different like clothing things. So I just want to know, would you recommend that or would you recommend something that's more quality worth?
So most external microphones will be better than what you get on your regular phone.
Mm-hmm.
If you can get any that you can afford, you're gonna increase your odds of getting better audio. So it will be a little better, right?
Okay.
Now, the degree of the better, right? How much leap you want, that's where it depends on how much you're willing to spend. You know what I mean? It is hard to gauge, right? Shure is one of the best out there in making audio equipment, which is why I wanted this particular mic. The other mics get close. Are they as good as Shure? No. But for me and what I do, I wanted the best mic I could get, right? And I can afford it, you know. But some people may not. So that's really just, I feel like it's based on your budget and kind of where you are.
Okay. No, just for the people in the YouTube live, because people don't be money.
Absolutely. Janetta asked, did you click on the slow-mo option on the iPhone to do that? Yes. That was when I did the effect, I clicked slow-mo and went to 120 or 240 when I had the water swishing around. Okay. So let's see. Cool. All right. So any other questions on the phone? Are we ready to move to the camera? All right. So now we're going to try to do something a little more fancy. Okay, so I have brought out my yeah. I brought out my, there we go. Brought up my big boy. You guys see that? Let's see. So you should see the little box in the corner. This is the Sony FX3. Okay. Cinema camera. Right? Super dope. Oh man. I'm gonna
You
need
said
power.
Sony XX3?
FX?
FX.
Frank. Yep, Frank X3. And I need to turn, usually you guys can only see the camera. You can't see the display because typically I don't want you to see the display, but now I do want you to see the display. So I need to turn that on. Display option, there we go. View main monitor. External output, there we go. Info on. There we go. All right, now we see all the info. Okay. You guys see that? See all the data?
Yes.
All right, cool. Okay, so on the bottom, there are 3 settings that you really want to pay attention to when you're shooting on a DSLR or a major camera. And all of them have something to do with light. Their byproduct is light, right? The only one whose goal is light, like is the only job is to control light, is the ISO. But the 3 settings are your shutter, your iris, and your ISO. All right. ISO, again, being the only one that's primarily focused on light. That's what people typically control first when you're shooting. And you want your ISO, so we're talking about ISO, you want your ISO to be the lowest possible. Right. So you see the lower I drop that ISO, the darker the image gets. But here's the cool part is the lower the ISO, the less grain or less snow you'll hear, right? So it's dark over there. The blacks will be black with a low ISO. But if I have a high ISO, right? And that's cool. Let's do that. And then I'm going to up my shutter to get the blacks, right? What typically happens is the blacks become snowy. It looks like there's fuzz on the black, right? So you want to shoot with the lowest ISO possible, even though the other settings can achieve a balanced image, right? You can use other things just like so what I did just now is I upped my shutter. You see my shutter's at 8,000, but my ISO is at 51,000. So I can see what's happening, but the blacks, you can probably tell a little bit, the blacks look a little fuzzier. All right, and that's because the ISO is just way too high. So that's what's cool is this thing can go, and maybe you can see a little more. Yeah, there we go. All right, so I can't even get my, yeah, I can't even get my iris to go down. Let's see. There we go. Right, so you see how that's the snow that we're talking about. You guys see that? It looks grainy. Okay, so I'm doing this just to really emphasize what the grain looks like, but this grain shows up even with a 8,000 ISO. You just can't see it until you blow it up on a major screen, right? So I would never, like, there's some images that are just unusable. If I'm shooting a wedding or something that's super critical, right? Or I filmed in a movie theater once and they wanted, it was dark. It was just completely dark, right? I would just up the ISO and sacrifice it, the snow, because I can't see regardless. So it's either you get no image or you get something like this, right? So I would opt for something like this over no image any day. But if you can control it at all, right? If you can use a little light or use your other settings, I would never increase my ISO. I want the ISO to be the lowest possible. All right. So ISO, let's drop that back down. Let's go. Typical ISO is 320 is what I usually shoot if I'm shooting outside. I try to be 640 if I'm indoors, right? But again, it's as low as possible. Okay, so I'm dropping the shutter. The other piece is your shutter. Now your shutter is that number, that 125, 160, 1/200 now. Okay. The shutter, and let me come here so you guys can see me. Let's see. There we go. All right, you got to see me on this one first. The shutter inside the camera, so inside this body, or really older cameras do it. This one doesn't do it as much, or the new digital cameras don't. But inside the body, when I click the button to take a picture, it usually goes, right? But when you're doing video, I told you just doing that 24 times, at 24 frames, or 60 at 60 frames, so on and so forth. So it's doing a whole lot more of them, right? The clicking, but it is indeed still doing that. It's taking pictures just really fast. So your shutter is, when you're taking a picture, the shutter, there's a, just think of a window over your lens that opens and closes. Okay, it opens and closes really fast. So at 125, it's opening, and I don't know if it's 125 a second or millisecond, whatever, but it's opening up 125 times and then closing, right? So you just think the longer I keep it open, the more light I let in, but also the more light I let in, the more motion I let in. So if something is moving really fast, like a piece of water, and now let me come back here. Okay. If this is moving really fast at 125, I can only pick up so much because it's taking so many pictures, right? If I really wanted to capture all the detail in it, I need to make sure my shutter's opening up fast enough. I want a faster shutter, but I don't want it so fast that my light gets compromised, right? So if I'm trying to capture some really good slow motion and I want as much detail, I want my shutter down. But again, now the image is probably too dark. So I will compromise my shutter to get me, where I need to be, because my primary goal is to keep that ISO low. I don't want the grain, right? So my shutter is there to capture speed. Okay, so if I'm shooting a basketball game or a race car, racetrack, I want my shutter to be high because I want it to capture it. Here's how another high shutter. You ever see somebody jump and they take a photo and they're perfectly still in the air when they take a photo? That's a sign of a high shutter. A low shutter is if they jumped. If somebody jumped in the air and you see the blur, right? Or somebody's waving and their hand is blurry, but their face is steady, right? When you take a photo, that the shutter was too low. Because what happened is when the shutter opened, there was enough time for their hand to go from here to here, and then it closed, and then it took the photo, right? If somebody's jumping and the shutter's too slow, there's enough time for them to go from here to here, right? That little movement is where the blur comes in. And that's why you'll see the ones, if they're jumping, there's some blur on it, the shutter is not high enough. When you see it, when you have a high shutter and somebody's waving, the shutter goes by so fast, you can't move, you can't see the motion from here to here, right? It captures it right at the millisecond when it jumps up, okay? That's a high shutter. So if you know you're shooting something fast, something where, again, somebody's jumping or whatever, you want to make sure your shutter is high as possible. Of course, keeping your ISO at a low as possible so you can still have a quality image that's well lit. All right. So that's the balance between the ISO and the shutter. Okay. And then the last factor, well, first, any questions on ISO and shutter? Okay. The last setting is your iris. Your iris is also called your f-stop. Okay. Now, a lens, a typical lens, and see if you can see this. Oh my God, my lens is filthy. But a typical lens is here. You guys can see that. It is a 24 to 70 millimeter, 1:2.8. Now, there are different lenses that you can get with cameras, and they all have different numbers. And what that means is this lens goes from 24 millimeters to 70 millimeters. And then we're going to get to iris, what that means. 24 millimeters is, just think a 35 millimeter is your typical, your eyesight can see 35. So if you look at your peripherals, that's like 35. 50 millimeter is like your portrait, your passport photo, right? It's it's kind of a head here, right? That's 50 millimeter. The higher the millimeter, the smaller that box gets. So again, 80 millimeter is like somebody's eye. 120 millimeters. It's, you're zooming into the box. The higher the millimeter. The lower the millimeter is the wider you can see. So at like 16 millimeters, it's when you start to see it fisheye. It starts to look round, like the world looks round, because you're seeing more than your peripheral. You can almost see like back here. Like I can't see my hands naturally, but at 16 millimeter, I typically can. Okay, so let's just show the millimeters. And keep in mind, guys, all of this stuff we go into more detail in our coaching program, right? Which we have a special offer for those who stick around. If you need to learn more or really want to dive in deeper, right? This is really just an overview, but we have methods to get really, really deep, right? So this is 24 millimeters. This is me sitting at 24 millimeters. I'm zooming out to 35 millimeter. I'm now zooming to 50 millimeter. And here's 70 millimeter, right? That's what this lens does. All right, that's your millimeters. Now going back to aperture, that 2.8, the 2.8 is how big, how large do you want your focus range in it? So you saw when we shot with the iPhone, you can't tell the iPhone, I only want, 1.2 or 2.8. I want a small focus range. You can't tell the iPhone that. The iPhone's going to try to figure it out. It's going to give you the bokeh. But the smaller the focus range, the more bokeh happens in the background. So if you think focus is really like a line, it's a line. So there's a line this way. So, again, imagine this line, but turned down and on a plane, like on in reality, and it moves like this. Or in my case, because I'm in front of the camera, it's this line, this width, and it moves up and down the world. The width of that line is your aperture. How wide is that line? So at 1 point, the lowest I see is like a 1.2. At a 1.2, the line, the width of the line, the focus line is so small, right? And at f11, the line is from here till the horizon. The width is everything, right? So 1.2 to 11, or I've seen even 14. 14 is everything. 1.2 is like the hair on my knuckle. You know what I mean? Like it's so thin, right? So the thinner the line, the more there is in the background. The wider the line, everything is in focus because there's nothing much to get. So I got 2.8. 2.8 typically is like, the middle of my head to the front of my nose. That'll be in focus. That's the width. That's how much will be in focus. And then everything outside of that width before and after will be blurred out. So that's at 2.8. Many cameras you'll see a 3.5 to 4.6 or 3.5 to 5.6. Well, it changes. So the width will be here if you're at 24 millimeters. But when you go to 70 millimeters, it goes to 5.6, right? So it's saying how wide is that line, depending on where you are, okay? So that's the 3.5 to 5.6. That's the width. Now what happens is, if that line gets smaller, the smaller the line, right? That's what allows you to see, and we'll see if it shows up here. All right. So right now we are at f5.6, right? So the microphone is in focus and there is some bokeh, but the line, let me see, it's about there. That's pretty much all in focus. If I put something before, yep, that's in focus. So that's in focus, right? And then it gets blurry. That's at 5.6. Now let me drop this to 2.8. So the byproduct of me dropping the iris, so having a smaller iris, the byproduct is it lets more light in. So I want to compensate for light. I like a high shutter, but if I can drop my ISO, again, that's my preference. Okay. And now you see this is now in focus. That's not. So let me go to. Oh, it's autofocus. Hold on. All right. So I'm moving the plane with the focus ring. So you see, so now the line is so much thinner because this is more out of focus. That's really out of focus. And that's more in focus, right? At 2.8. And I can keep moving the focus ring and now get to there, right? And it allows me to see how much is in focus, right? So I typically never shoot 2.8. I generally shoot 3.5, right? And that's because when I'm filming, people move their heads, they move around. I can still achieve my bokeh, right? But I don't have to compromise because there's nothing worse than having an image where the subject is out of focus. That's the worst. So I can still get them in focus, get the bokeh with less risk that they move out of focus. All right. Now, as a reminder, you learn these 3 methods, guys, and how they work with each other. You can shoot on anything. I've shot on Red. I've shot on Red Komodo. I've shot on the Ari, right? It's not what you're using. It's how to use it and where are these settings. That's all it is. It's where do I find the aperture shutter, right? But you can use any camera if you learn the relationships between these 3 items. All right. So that's the 3.5. Let me see if I can get up to a 10. And then let me drop my shutter. No, won't let me. So let me increase my ISO, right? So we get enough light. And you see, there's like everything's in focus. Right? See the difference there? So that's your f-stop. And your f-stop is controlled by your lens. If you don't have a lens that will allow you to get down to 125 or 2.8, then there's nothing you could do. All right. So that's the major settings and difference between a DSLR and a phone. I know that was a whole lot of information. That was your shooting crash course, but it gets a whole lot deeper. But at this point, let me open up the room for any questions that you all may have. Oh, just to go back to what the wife said, right? When it came to audio, so there's audio for the cell phone, which is a mic. But on DSLR cameras, if you're shooting a film, typically audio will be recorded separately. I'm just going to pull an audio device really quick. Hold on.
I feel like having church. I feel like having church. I got church on my mind. Need to.
Okay, so typically you'll see come on now, Bible, love it. Don't have dense. Shotgun mic, right? I'll mount this on top. So this actual camera comes with a top handle that you put on top here, which has XLR ports on this side. You see the ports over there? So those ports allow me to connect a shotgun mic to it, and that's how I record audio typically. If you're on a film set, typically you have an audio person, they'll have like a Zoom recorder or some kind of field recorder, again, with XLR ports. And so then they'll connect lapel mics. So the actor will be mic'd with a lapel mic, and then the receiver will be on the other end here, and then they'll record on the other device, right? And then you sync those two, because the camera will record in camera. This records on its own SD card, right, in the device. or their field recording device. And then when you go to post and editing, which will go tomorrow, you would combine those two to sync them up to get your video and audio together. Cool. All right. So any questions on shooting with the iPhone or a DSLR?
No, sir. That was a lot though.
That's
My brain is trying to overload.
yeah. Well, that's why this replay will be available for you. So you can go back and watch it again. I'll also say I learned a lot of this not by just watching it, by doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I on a regular basis, I would take out my phone and just practice. I'd be shooting everything. I would turn on the sink, the faucet when I was washing my hands, and I would shoot the water. I would shoot my hands, and I would shoot in slow-mo and cinematic and be like, oh, okay, I see the difference. Right. With my kids, I'd put up the phone and we'd be playing video games or something, or playing around the house, and I'd shoot in HD 30, then I'd shoot in HD 60. Oh, okay, I see what that is. Right. When I bought my first DSLR, this is not my first. My first one was like a Canon 7D. I took it everywhere. Even this camera, I don't walk around without my camera. My camera's always on me. Right. But what I would do before is I would actually take it out. And when I was at church, or when I was on the playground, or when I was at whatever, I would be shooting, right? Changing the settings and everything else. These are one of those things kind of like languages. Like if you don't use it, it's too much. You lose it. If you use it on a regular basis, then it becomes second nature. Okay. So don't get too concerned by trying to retain all of it right when you get it. It's not really meant to retain everything at first glance, right? The more you do it, the better you get at it.
A church on my mind so bad.
Huh?
I said I got church on my mind so bad. I got Thai tribute in my head.
Okay, look, ain't nothing wrong, baby, because I'm anointed. I'm bringing that fire from Todd Tribbett. I don't know. I love it. Okay, so let's see. If we're shooting solo scenes, iPhone, you suggest an external mic. If you're shooting a solo scene on the iPhone, I always suggest an external mic if you can afford it, right? Because you can get better audio, period. So if you can use it, get it. But it does complicate things, right? Because even my phone, I can take it out now, I'm not using it, right? Even the phone to put the microphone on here, I don't have an extender. There is an extender you can get. I didn't get the extender, right? So it doesn't just fit in my case. So I got to take it out the case.
Come on, Case.
You know, the good case too.
And you know it's a good case when you got the tongue sticking out.
So I have to take it out my case, then put it in, and then now record with it, right? Also, sometimes I use a gimbal. And you guys seen a gimbal, you know, so what allows you to the camera to float, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you gimbal. This doesn't fit on my gimbal, right? So you have to decide, like, is it worth the extra work? And how much difference will it actually make? Audio is absolutely the defining factor of professional video. So as much as you can, I would look to get the best audio possible. But then again, there's still always a trade-off. You know, sometimes it just becomes too much, and the audio from the phone is close enough. So really, you just want to gauge that. But great question, Tiara.
Just like water. Mm-hmm. 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 Mm-hmm.
All right. Nikkei, you have any questions? You're doing good?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right. So then after this, that is it safe to say you guys are ready to shoot your projects? You know what to do to shoot?
Just like how Jesus turned water into wine.
Oh, let me say this about lighting. I'm gonna go grab a light.
Jesus, turn one.
Huh? You know, it's my Wakanda bag in the car.
Wakanda.
All right. All right. Well, actually, let's see if we do this. I got to show you guys the difference of light. Hold on.
That song is in my head, Lord Jesus, have mercy.
Okay, cool. Okay. So when it comes to lighting, I don't know if you've seen how I look different, right? I may have warmed
Yeah,
up.
it seems like it's a backlight.
Yeah, it's really just I just warmed the image up. Okay, so let me go back here to this camera and let me turn this off. Cool. Actually, no, let me turn that back on. Okay. So my white balance is here. Yep, it's on auto. Okay, cool. All right. So here's an image with the light setting on what's called tungsten. So you guys see that image over there, a little sun over the DR off. I don't know if you guys can see that. So MF is on that side of the screen, the left side of the screen. On the right side of the screen, on the other side of the screen is that it's the little, looks like a little light bulb, right? That's my white balance. So I don't know if you could tell the difference. Let's see if it'll show. Yep, start doing a good job. Can you see the difference of color between those two lights? Between that one and that one? Do they look the
Yes.
same? Do
No.
they look okay? What color are they?
The
One
one on
looks
the
a little
left kind
bit-
of has like a blue tint to it.
Yeah,
That
that
one?
one, yeah.
Yeah.
On the
and
left.
that one's
Mhm.
more
That was
white.
bright white.
Okay. And if I come here, I'm gonna change my white balance. So my white balance is incandescent. Now I'm gonna change the white balance to daylight. Okay, now what is it doing?
One's mm, so the one that was blue, right, is now white.
Yep.
And that one has like a
yellow.
like a yellowish, but you can see a little orange though.
Yes, exactly. Okay, good. That's what light does to a camera. So think of like a flame, right? When you light a lighter, at the base of the lighter, where it's the hottest, it's actually what color? No smokers? We have a lighter?
I don't
Me,
smoke.
sorry, I was singing "Fire and Desire" by Rick James.
That's okay. So when you light a lighter, what color is usually at the base?
The
Blue.
base
It's blue,
blue.
because that's the hottest. And then as the flame comes up and it cools off, it gets more orangish,
Yeah.
right?
Wow.
Okay. So the sun is the hottest source of light. It's a heat setting. So the sun being the hottest source, it's like the blue. It shines blue. So when you're shooting outdoors and you set your camera, right? So we set it to auto, but when you set your camera to be, and you're shooting outdoors, you set it to be outdoor daylight, it's going to translate blue to be white. You're telling the camera that temperature, make that white, make blue white. And when you shoot it to incandescent with the light bulb is usually indoor light. Most places indoor shine yellow. So you're telling the yellow to be white. So why that's important is when you're filming, you want your white, let's call it white balance. You want your white to be the predominant light source in the room, the color of the light. So if you're shooting outdoors or you got it shooting next to a window and you got a lot of light coming in that window, you're going to set your camera to the outdoor light. Just for the record, without going too technical, it's 5,600 Kelvin or 5.6K. You'll see that. 5,600 Kelvin is the setting for outdoor light. 3,200 Kelvin or 3.2K is the setting for indoor, for the yellow. But white light is not really white. It depends on what light you're talking about, because the sun shows more blue and incandescent shows more yellow. And that's why you'll see here, I've got them mixed. I've got that one shining more blue or, outdoor white. And I got this one shining more yellow or indoor white. And so that's why my skin tone looks a little weird, because even this camera is trying to interpret what color I am. It's trying to white balance. And right now it's balanced for outdoor white, which is why now I'm showing really yellow. And so I'm going to change the light back. I'm changing the color of the light. Back to 5,600. Okay. And now I look more balanced, right? I don't look all warm. That's because the camera's white balance is set to outdoor light. And actually, really, these other lights are on too. Why can you turn that light off?
It's weird.
There we go. So now the only light is coming in is that light and the purple behind me, but that's just an uplight. But the lights here are all daylight. They're all set to 5,600 Kelvin, and the camera is set to 5,600 Kelvin. So my white shirt should look white, not yellow. If it does look yellow or, a little off, or my skin tone should be regular, but my white should look white. If it shows up yellow, that means I've got the wrong setting. If it shows up blue, I've got the wrong setting. Your white should show up white. And that's based on your white balance. All right. Let's see. I think that's about it. Yeah, because we can go all day about cameras. There's so much more, but this is a good crash course, right? You guys should have a dope overview of now, how do I shoot my projects? Another quick tip, the Sign Up Professional video is foreground, middle ground, background is what I tell people. So foreground is have something before the subject, then you have the subject, and you have something after the subject. If you can shoot like that, it looks amazing. It just looks even more cinematic. We've got so many more tips on how to make sure your stuff looks great. And that's what we will have that more explained in our offers. Well, actually, I'll lay out what the offers are tomorrow, so you guys can have the opportunity to join early. And then, yeah, we'll go from there. So if there aren't any more questions, I can just a moment, just any more questions on shooting before tomorrow, where we're going to get into editing. And we're going to be editing on the phone and editing on the computer, right? So we're going to be talking about those two items. And then the next day after that is going to be monetization. How do we post for distribution, and how do we monetize our accounts, and where's the money being made, and how do we know how to make it? So that's going to be an exciting day as well. All right. So any more questions, guys?
No. I do not
Awesome.
have.
No.
Okay. Do you feel fed? Did you learn something today?
Yes, Jesus is real.
Come
My
on.
God. Oh my God. I'm telling you, when I get off this little Zoom, I'm playing my gospel music. It might have me a little moment.
Good. That's okay. Have your whole day. Don't just take a moment.
Oh, I'm gonna have the whole day, the whole year.
There it is. DK, did you learn anything?
I did, but a lot of the stuff, of course, I've learned in film school too. But I did learn some new things from you.
Okay, good.
Yes, most definitely. I learned more things from you than the classes that I took at Albany State. And God bless your soul.
That's awesome. Within an hour. Okay, and that's super great. Do you want to elaborate? Anything you learned, Nikkei? Like one thing.
Say that again. You broke up just a little.
One thing you learned today.
Well, first of all, as far as I didn't know that you're supposed to shoot at the, what is it, the 1080 or the HD 30 per frames per second on the phone. Like that's mostly used for Reels and TikTok.
Mhm.
Yeah, I didn't know
And
that
then-
either.
that was new to me. And then also how you said like you shoot in 24 frames per second, but then you export it to the 60 frames per second.
The opposite. So I shoot in 60, but I always export 24.
Okay, yeah. Okay, let me
Okay.
fix
Ooh,
that. Wrote it the opposite way. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was new to me too.
Okay. Very cool. All
Yeah.
right. Tay, one thing you learned.
I learned the difference between the cameras, like the actual camera in the settings versus the phone. I feel like that plays a different major part of the differences between that because I'm always on my phone. So I didn't know like the different technicals and settings off the camera, which I'm gonna learn more off of it. But I learned different tactics, which was really, really cool.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Well, that's going to make you better. The better you can get at shooting, I tell you, even professionals. A lot of people, these cameras, the settings that I went through, it has an auto mode. You don't have to go into the settings. The cameras are really smart these days. Technology is really smart, but humans are smarter, right? And so if you can learn the technicalities of these phones and what they're doing, it just makes you better even in auto mode. You know what's happening, or if the auto isn't quite getting your color right, or it's not quite getting the bokeh right, or it's not quite doing what you need it to do, you have the knowledge base to go in and fix it, right? You're not just relying completely on the technology. So that's why I love teaching this and really diving into it, because it really just empowers you more to take more control of and produce the images that you really want or you see in your head, right? So cool. All right. Well, that's it, guys. Thank you so much. Wife, do you have anything to say? Okay, cool. All right. Thank you so much. We'll see you tomorrow at 7 o'clock for our VIP, 7:30 for our general admission, everyone else, where we're going to be going over editing. If you thought today was overwhelming, just be ready tomorrow because we're going to be moving lightning speed to make sure you guys know how to edit this stuff.
Editing, boy, is a process.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, guys. I'll see y'all tomorrow.
You guys
Bye.
have a good one.